Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your recap for Thursday, November 8th. And this will be a pretty quick recap for the day because I've actually got to run to the airport. But I'll go over today's price action. Well, today was Fed Day, and I don't think I have to double check this, but I don't think that we've had an up day or where the S&P has actually gone up on any day where there's been a FOMC meeting, a Fed meeting, since Powell took over. The market just does not like those days. So if you look at the overall S&P, of course we had this big update yesterday where everything participated. We, basically closed on the highs in a lot of things, and just strong all around day yesterday. So it would make sense to me that we would have a little bit of digestion. But if you look under the hood, there was some trouble. And that, I wouldn't say troubling spots because today, one day is not a trend. But I'll go through some of these areas that really got hit pretty hard today. And at one point today, I think this was before the Fed meeting or before the official press headlines and so forth. But it was around like 12 o'clock today. I'm like, we're really only down 10 basis points in the S&P because I see a lot of things that are in the red today. So again, it all depends on how these indices are weighted. But this is trading now in the aftermarket. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say we're at the top of value, right? We've got some resistance going on. We've also got the 50-day moving average ahead of us. So yeah, there's a little bit of problem areas, not problem areas, but resistance that we've got to get through, one day at a time. Here we had a little bit more of a pullback. Keep in mind, NASDAQ did outperform yesterday, so it gave back a little bit more of those gains, down 85 basis points. It's going to come back now and retest this 200-day moving average, which is coming through, which is the white line coming through the screen here. Small caps, which to be honest, I barely even looked at the small caps today. They were down 27 basis points. Not a big move. They're kind of sitting right at the top of value as well. So really not that bad when you look at it. But you look at some sectors today, and starting with which I thought. Now, granted, I'm not really in the pot stocks, so a little bit, I have FOMO from missing out on yesterday's move. But I did say this in the trading room yesterday. I said watch for the old buy the rumor, sell the news, because it did pop. Like things like Tillery did go up after the sessions report, but a lot of times it's a fade the news, and you can see this thing was down 6% today. These these pot stocks are so volatile. It's just if you're in these things, you have to respect your stops basically. And believe it or not, it's crazy. This thing is crazy. Tillery had a down 15% day, and it was only an inside day. Meaning it did not get out of the range of yesterday. So there was some puts that were bought in this. We went over that, I think, in the midday video. There were some puts, two-way flow actually a little bit in Tillery. There was a little bit of a call buyer too, but the puts outweighed the calls. And same thing with another one, CGC. There was a decent, that was straight up puts that were bought in this one. But you go back to this Tillery, if you're trading with the value areas, excellent. I mean, this is perfect. Again, you have to be able to click the mouse and follow it. But, here was your break into value, retest, top of value, and that's it. Really could not get out of the day's value area on the retest. So not so good there. And then if you kind of look across sectors, so here was also the big story of the day. I'm surprised I'm waiting 4 minutes before I get into this. But really was the strength in the dollar. So I've been talking about the dollar a lot lately. So this is the Uup ETF. It was down a lot the last couple days, but it is really accelerated to the upside today, up 60 basis points. So here's the thing of this, and I think I talked about this in last night's video. It has gone through the value area, but on the weekly chart, but on the daily, there is still that version point of control sitting up there at 26. So I thought maybe if we could sit back into value, once we get into value, or once you're in the value area, you don't have to worry about these purple lines. because you're in the range. But once you get outside of it, they kind of become active. And I think I did go over this in last night's video. I know I went over a lot of stuff, but this is a headwind, right? I mean, the stronger dollar is a headwind for a lot of stocks that have an international exposure to them. And the same certainly for emerging markets, which I thought, again, we could kind of look at some of these things, but once they, we could do the analysis, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And emerging markets now ducked back below a big day. So again, looking at the averages, not down that much, but you look at emerging markets, the emerging market ETF was down 2.6%. This just saw inflows yesterday too. IEMG. And there was another one too. The South Korea ETF saw inflows yesterday too. So they're failing again. This 50-day moving average. We had one day, and we've done this before. We've had a couple days where it's poked its head above the 50-day moving average and then resumed its downtrend. So there was a couple things that I saw here. Divergence in the RSI. It did not make a new low when the price did. So it may hang in there, but it's too early to tell, and it's back below. I started a trade yesterday in EM, and I got out of it today. It's just not worth it to. That's my stop was the 50-day moving average, so that's it. Just other areas that got smoked today. Again, I see a lot of sectors that are down more than 2%. The home builders got smacked on DR Horton. So if you look at the whole group, this is ITB, which had this big bounce from a couple weeks ago. But some of these names that are in downtrends, they get a bounce and then they resume their downtrend. So I would be careful with that in the home builders ETF. It did come off the lows because I think it was down well over 3% today. So that also suffered today. Oil, I think everybody started to pick up on oil. This was something that we talked about in the pre-market session. Really getting oversold at this point. I believe there is an OPEC meeting this weekend. Again, I'll have to double check on that. But the oil futures that you could bring up on Thinkorswim, down another 1.5%. Look at how many red days that we've had in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the RSI, which is a great sense of overbought, oversold, is a 22. Sorry, if I move the mouse down here, it changes. But it is a 22, which is really oversold. It's probably due for a bounce. That said, option activity today, 150,000 of these. It's tough to tell when they have these big blocks like this go up. 3 blocks of 50,000 went up here, and so it does look like there's some bearish positioning going on. I don't believe that those were sold. The 150,000, 31 strike puts going out to February. Let's just take it for what it is right now in this chart. It's below, the price is below, because again, that's how I use option activity. I do use it for a gauge of what is going on and a trade idea. But from a technical standpoint, it broke the 200-day moving average, gapped below it. It has already bounced, so it's not oversold, even though this was down 3.7% today. And I think when those puts started trading, mind you, XOP was down about 3.2%, 3.2% when those puts started to go up today. So it did go down further. I always want to tell you that, because sometimes people say, well, those puts went up and XOP was down 3.7%. Did you see that? But if the puts went up at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. So they started to go up midday, and and they mainly traded in the afternoon, the puts, and you could see some big blocks go up. So that could be the market maker hedging, or the broker hedging that order with the stock. So if we go back to this chart on the daily, just to kind of finish this analysis, but you have a retest of the value area and a fail today. So remember, just a couple days ago we saw calls go up in XOP aggressively. So now we see big puts go up. I do think that this may, if you look at what's going on in oil, regardless of if oil bounces a little bit, if you want to wait for if you're looking to short this group, I don't know if this is going to move that much if oil does bounce, but I do think at this point, when we're looking at a 22 RSI, it's probably due for a little bit of a bounce. And then I don't know. It is broken below the 200. There is that VPOC down there too. It's 60. Nope. Is that a VPOC? I think it is a VPOC, even though it's not showing up. But there should be a virgin point of control down here. So maybe it gets a little bit more oversold. I'm just speculating, of course. And then maybe it hits a little bit of support. So pretty, but all in all, what a move in this oil going down. All right, so that is that. What else to kind of talk about? So what I'm focusing on next week, again, and really my strategy yesterday was to try not to trade that much. Most of what I was doing yesterday was taking positions off. I talked a bit about that Expedia trade I put on yesterday. Got clocked today, down 2%. I still have it on. I left it on and is not broken. It did not hit my stop today. Very close to it, but you know, that trade that I put on was a starter position yesterday, but you know, it's very difficult to not add positions when everything is going up, swing trade positions, and you will always see call activity when everything is going up. You've got people doing things. So what I'm looking at for next week, as we get into the end of the week, is really if value is going to persist. You know, value has been, we had one big day of growth outperforming, and will it just be one day? We'll have to see. This is the IBD 50 name ETF that I talked about yesterday. It didn't do bad today. It was only down 16 basis points. But if you look at some of the names that reported after the close, it just seems like what we're seeing with names report after the close, which we go over all these names. If you're a member of Tribeca Trade Group, we go over every name that reports earnings or every name that's notable in detail. So that's what you're getting when you're a member, in addition to everything else that we're doing during the day, pointing out trades and so forth. But growth just is not being rewarded after earnings. Most growth names, growthy names, yesterday was a little bit of a split, but today the majority of growth names that reported are all down. Disney, more value, is up. Now Disney doesn't generally move that much on earnings. The options were only implying about a 2-3% move, which is historically what it does on earnings. So it is up a little bit. All right, guys, we'll leave it there. But that's what I'm watching for next week. We'll see if value wants to continue to outperform growth, and we'll go from there. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.